Hello, I'm Malcolm Bendall. Come here to give you a full presentation of the overall schematics and theory behind the thunderstorm generator and the plasmoid-driven technologies ranging from jet engines to diesel engines, petrol engines, gas engines. I've been working on this project and gathering this information globally, and that's meant that I've had to travel for 20 years out of Australia to find the sources of the information anywhere from the deserts of Egypt to the libraries throughout Europe and in America, and also even the Vatican Library, going back as far as I can in history, so I can go forward as far as we can in the future with this old technology, which was lost, and the basis of it, which has also been lost, which is the sacred geometry. And that's why we've been focusing on geometry, because unfortunately I think that's the part that's difficult for people, because it's crystal form and their relationship to elements and their expression as monad, dyad, triad, tetrad is not well known by the public. And although it's universally ubiquitous in the sense that it relates to the planets, then the minerals and the elements on the planet. So as above, so below. So we've taken people from a transition from partial knowledge that hasn't been taught. So it's very hard to explain a technology where from the schooling system in the West, not so much in the East, because you have the Tibetan schooling, and you also have the schooling of the Sanskrit text, specifically India, which really relates to the history, the long history and deep history that's pretty much discarded. It's sort of a colonial sort of idea of, when everyone was being invaded and conquered at the peak of, the British Empire and the Spanish Empire and the Dutch Empire and, the German Empire. So all these empires, the Ottoman Empire, all these sort of disrupted history, and we lost a lot of things in that disruption that that we don't have a base now to really go back and understand. So starting with sacred geometry and working all the way from sacred geometry, and you have to take that sacred geometry as being a scientific fact rather than a sort of an ancient myth. So and of course, I would point out that in the 18th century, it was a fact that Troy was a myth because no one had found it. So obviously it didn't exist. But then, unfortunately, for those that said it didn't exist, these pesky little things have a habit of turning up. So, and the same, I'm sure, will happen with Atlantis, as it does with everything else. That this strange proclivity of the human species to disregard and completely minimalize the knowledge of our ancestors is very naive and also very insulting to the ancestors and very insulting to the people that wrote the Sanskrit text, because they had the same mental acuity that we had, the same anatomically the same. And the Romans, and their aqueducts and sewerage works and, their city building and, planning of the cities out and, a lot of forethought and and also with the Indian cities in history that you can look at, and they're all planned out. They all have, very similar within the cultures, very similar blueprints, which means there was a central government and there was a central body of knowledge that government was drawing upon. And that knowledge throughout history comes and goes like the tide. Yep. And so, and so, and civilizations rise and fall on, whether the sun's in solar minimum or solar maximum. So these things are actually well-known cycles throughout history that any casual observer can sort of go to the ice cores in Greenland and have a look at that. They can look at the seafloor spreading with the change in the polarities, which means the change of the poles regularly between North Pole swapping to South Pole and vice versa. So basically, in this presentation, what I've done to get this information is to look at, try to go back to the very base of knowledge, and that is from the very observations of things that are empirical. That is, you can't argue over the fact that the moon is there because it reminds you it's there every full moon. So, and basically you can't then dismiss the fact that the sun's there. So, and the distances between the sun and the moon remain the same, although over time they have their variations, but fundamentally the proportions and ratios of those numbers are consistent, and with the planetary sizes, as they are consistent, and this is the main element that I found in the tour around the world. You can go to different continents and acknowledge the work there of Graham Hancock, and just as an observer, you can observe that these when you measure them and you look at the structures, that there has to be some communication between these communities, whereas very much going back to the colonial sort of view is that when all these invasions happened, they were very disruptive because they completely dismissed or deliberately dismissed or wanted to negate any possibility that there was especially in South America, that there was any civilization there. So they sort of wiped out the record. And that had a lot to do with politics as well, because people were claiming nations on the basis that they were uninhabited. And therefore they could legally just come and take the nation. Anyway, so we'll go through that history throughout and show the evidence of that throughout the presentation. So basically, this is the beginning. The Strike Foundation is the entity in which we're using to bring forth the technology, and that has a mechanism of lodging the IP at the IP bank. And so, and the strikefoundation.earth is where people can follow up on this presentation and go to other resources beside this basically slide presentation, PowerPoint presentation with the embedded videos. So, and of course, molten sea arc atomic reconstruction technology, just to explain that to everyone, it's about the ancient numbers that are basically locked into, for example, the pyramid, and locked into all these ancient structures that Graham Hancock's identified, and then Randall Carlson has come on top of that and sort of then said, okay, but look at the numbers, look at the size of these things, look at the heights, look at the the relationship in all these different countries to the architecture. So basically, the molten sea arc goes back to the fact that the Solomon's Molten Sea is the last known, that I found, the last known plasmoid generator consciously used in history to generate and store charge using the MSAT plasmoids, which are an atomic battery, through their geometry. And that's why geometry is so important, and that's why it's very naive to dismiss sacred geometry as being, some hocus pocus in the past and they didn't know what they're doing. The fact is that everything in the universe is based on geometry, and obviously based on harmonics, octaves, and the going back to the elements, that the elements themselves is, I postulate, are plasmoids as well. That is imploded spheres. You have a north and a south pole that are imploded together. So the plasmoids, if generated through an imploding bubble, are very safe entities because they can be used as effective storage tools, where it's that you can generate them and then they can store and discharge in a controlled manner the energy which is implanted into them. So that's why it's called molten sea arc, as the molten sea is the charger for plasmoids. The arc of the covenant is a capacitor that has the ability to hold those plasmoids. So an atomic reconstruction technology goes to the ability of these plasmoids, which were well known 3,000 years ago, that we lost the knowledge of and therefore lost the utility of. And I'd suggest probably if we hadn't have lost the Library at Alexandria that was burnt down, we would be a different civilization now, because it was easier, simpler and more effective to use that technology, other than because it's an implosive technology, and life itself is an implosive process. So if you have go then to explosive processes, which is internal combustion engine, and for jet engines it's the same. So you produce toxins and byproducts, which by definition, simply because they're explosive, create a positive charge that is death and destruction. So we don't want a positive charge. We don't want an atmosphere that has a positive charge, because then we cannot hold on to our ionosphere. So we need to understand that. So, and this is part of this presentation, is that I want to get everyone away from explosive technologies onto implosive technologies, which, explosive technologies are primitive technologies. Implosive technologies are intelligent and are the hallmark of enlightened societies, which have said, oh, we need to get away from destroying the planet because we're living on it. That's enlightenment. Yep. So basically, going to the next slide, then this is a table of contents, and anyone having a look at this presentation can simply go through to the section that they're interested in. And these different sections go through both the ancient history and the manifestation in the record of tools which can produce plasmoids, like the Vajra. So, and then it goes down to the petrol retrofit, kerosene jet engine, the chimney and thunderstorm. So everything that we currently have in society, and I mean everything across the board, from mobile phones to washing machines, to cars, to jets, to submarines, to aircraft carriers, to spaceships, are all fundamentally subject to change when you apply the plasmoid technology to that action. That is, if you want to go on the sea, you can, instead of using an internal combustion engine as a power source to drive you and to create the thrust, you would use a plasmoid-based power source, not an internal combustion engine-based plasmoids. But in the meantime, we can transition smoothly from the internal combustion engine to the plasmoid based engine, simply because we can retrofit the internal combustion engine so that to be more efficient, by putting the retrofit of the plasmoid system, MSAT plasmoid system, onto that, which means that at the same time you're not collapsing the oil industry nor the automotive industry, because the sensible, smart thing is that you use the plasmoids to directly convert crude oil into protein, when that protein's worth more than the petrol. So that gives the oil industry a smooth transition, gives society a smooth transition, and that's what we're wanting to do, because it is a disruptive technology if it's not implemented with a great degree of care and forethought as to what those changes, what impact those changes will have. So anyway, so we go through here and to the last sections, we have some diagrams talking about the relationship between ether and matter, and then we go on further to for the ultimate application of plasmoids is in space exploration, because it produces the opportunity to have literally an infinite source of energy, which is matter, available to you, and you can travel at speeds exceeding the speed of light, because the speed of light is not a constant. Therefore, our technology alters the speed of light, therefore the precession of time, and that's what you'd call as a warp drive, where you're warping space-time. So basically that's the ultimate, but let's just start from taking existing technologies, and this is an introduction to how we're going to transition existing technologies through to plasmoid-based technologies, which is an introduction to the new industrial revolution. So anyway, we'll move on to the next slide now. So as famous Mr. Albert Einstein said, there's enough energy in a glass of water to boil all the oceans of the world. And that statement is, he's not alone in that statement, but it does, is a reason for everyone in the world to pause on that statement. Because if that statement's correct, and we can rely on a lot of the basic fundamentals behind that statement, but also on the gentleman himself, then one has to figure that how do you unlock that energy? Because it's an enormous amount of energy, and I think Keely had similar statements. Many people, Tesla had similar statements about the power of water. So this technology actually uses the power of water in a sensible way, which is clean, without nuclear byproducts, and can be implemented globally. So just, and you'll see the purple here, which you'll see on the next slide, which comes to the key to the technology. So you'll see here a purple light, and that purple light represents about 7,000 every second imploding bubbles caused by ultrasonics. So basically, sometimes it's done in a sphere or sometimes in a tube. Basically, you apply ultrasonics, so you have a collision point, which basically creates heat. That heat creates bubbles. Those bubbles then collapse. And when they collapse, 7,000 a second, then it produces this UV light. Now, the UV light indicates a atomic based reaction. There's a lot of energy coming out of that center, and embedded in this embedded in this PowerPoint presentation is a video which demonstrates the forces that are involved and an explanation of them. So anyway, that's called the star in the jar, and I recommend people go and have a look at that, because there's many people ran the same experiment. It's a repeatable experiment that's well acknowledged. Now, this is curious because the first star in the jar appearance was in 1934. So, almost 100 years ago, and yet this is the first time that observed phenomenon has been used in a commercial application, to my knowledge. So we'll go to the next slide. And basically, this gives an understanding of what can be achieved using those imploding bubbles, which actually form plasmoids, MSAT plasmoids. That's plasmoids formed in water. So, and we have protein that's in water, which is known as hydrogen, but hydrogen is actually a group and protium is an element. So, and that protium is really 111. In carbon is 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. The nitrogen, which is 80% of our air, which is part of our technology because you can travel through the air, and if you can split one of the strongest bonds in chemistry is the bond between N2, the nitrogen, when it combines. The same with O2. They're a combination. So if you can split that combination, you can produce ammonia, which can be used in the same way as petrol. So, and in my notes in section 2, you will see a full scientific explanation of that phenomenon, so we can actually use the nitrogen from the atmosphere to power your car. So, and then you have oxygen, which is 8 protons, 8 neutrons, and 8 electrons. So these are the key components. You know, nitrogen is, as I said, about 79% of our atmosphere. Oxygen's about 20%. So, and carbon in the form of, carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide, only a very small percentage of the gases in our atmosphere. Now, the next slide will show you how we manipulate that and use that by through the facilitation of, you think of the MEMSAT plasmoids as being both an atomic battery but also as a catalyst. So they can enable reactions that normally would be at a lot higher pressures and temperatures at a lot lower pressures and temperatures. That's what a catalyst does. And so basically, if you take hydrogen and you can split it up into its elemental basic forms, protium, proton and electron, then that, and if they're free and under certain circumstances you can add them to carbon, then you can create oxygen. Now, the mechanism to do that is actually dimensional. That is, we're 3 dimensions, but the ether is the 5th dimension. Basically, all matter has frequency. If you can strip the frequency off it or put an environment with no frequency, then it goes to just pure energy, DC, the same as your battery. So that what we do here is that, in fact, facilitated by creating a 0 point where there is no frequency. And at that 0 point where there is no frequency, elemental matter cannot exist. And if you can create that 0 point, and you can move, for example, exhaust gases through that 0 point plane, then the exhaust gases, the carbon can be transformed, dissociated, and then reformed as oxygen, therefore eliminating the byproducts, not through any mechanism that is currently used in our society. So oxygen, which is your 888, then can be created by adding protons and electrons which have been disassociated. That is, they've taken back to their before frequency. So there's no frequency added, so they just go back to pure energy, which is the ether, which is direct DC, direct current. So basically, through this 0 point plane that, for example, the exhaust gases go through, which are basically carbon-based, like carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide, which are the cause of concern at the moment. So how do you get rid of that? Well, you simply disassociate your hydrogen into its base form of energy, and then you add that in proportion to take your carbon, which is 666, to your oxygen, which is 888. So, and in that process, what effectively you've done is, with your exhaust gases, you've taken a stream of toxic products which are positively charged, and you've actually reformed them into oxygen and got rid of your hydrocarbons, which are also part of the carbon equation, as well as your carbon dioxide and monoxide. So you've got rid of those elements, and then those elements are therefore been extinguished, but the energy from them has not been lost. And at the same time that you've done that, you've actually used your waste energy from the internal combustion engine, which not many people actually know that when you go to the petrol pump, that you put $3 worth of petrol into your car, and that $3 worth of petrol would go $1 to powering the car and $2 as your contribution to destroying the planet. So we're getting right away from that with a simple retrofit, which is just to bolt onto your engine, unbolt the exhaust pipe on one side, just unbolt the carburetor, put a little spacer in and bolt it all back together again. Very simple. You can actually go to the pump and you can spend $2 to drive your car around and $1 to replenish and restore the planet back to what it should be. So this is a huge, not only industrial revolution and an energy revolution, but it's also an enlightenment revolution, because you're going from doing things that we all know are not constructive to changing the way in which we do things so that they can be constructive and life-giving and planet strengthening and replenishing. So basically that's that. I'll go to the next slide, which is to go backwards to go forwards, is that the most recent reference to plasmoids you can find in the Bible, which goes back further than Solomon's temple, which is about 3,000 years ago from now, about 1000 BC, to Job, which is a lot older than that, in the Patriarch's Valley. So basically, Job chapter 38, verses 35 and 36, God is inquiring, can you send forth lightnings so that they may go and say to you, here we are? Well, those lightnings are actually the plasmoids that create the path of lightning. The reason that happens is you have to have an ionized path over long distances, because everyone's seen how high lightning is and how long those paths are. Well, it's only with recent high-speed cameras that science has been able to find, and when I mean recent, with the last 10 years, where science has found that the first thing that happens with lightning is that the ionized path is created. And that goes to something else that's in this presentation, the next section, which is showing that that ionized path can be used to connect our planet to the ionosphere, and therefore, as Nikola Tesla demonstrated in all his patents, in his planetary power plant patents, until he was shut down by JP Morgan, he intended to supply the Earth with free unlimited power. We can still do that, and it's a proposal to do that using the plasmoids. And the plasmoids, as God said, here we are. Well, if anyone knows anything about how their brain operates, it operates through charge. You have nerve endings that spark. So there's intelligence, you bright sparks, and that intelligence is from electricity. So it should be no surprise that plasmoids, which create the path for lightning and which themselves are atomic batteries, are in fact sentient beings. And if God's prepared to talk to them, then so am I. So basically, it says, who has put wisdom in the inward parts? Because in this society we have lots of knowledge, but a gross diminishment in the level of wisdom to apply that knowledge, and also no wisdom in how to manage current technologies such as nuclear bombs and nuclear power. So, or give an understanding to the mind. So, on the basis that plasmoids are real and they're sentient beings, I did infuse myself with plasmoids to an extent that I had a greater level of understanding about the construction of not only the elements but the universe. So, and that's my story, and that's what I've done. So basically, the next slide. here's the where the rubber hits the road, is that all these technologies are fine to discover and to put together, but they're not any use to anyone unless they have a practical application. So here are 30 practical applications that have been put out by the Strike Foundation to enable changes in all these 30 areas that have been identified, which we can immediately use the MSAT plasmoids as atomic batteries to enable all of these different applications to be brought forth. Anywhere from, obviously, as we've said, with cars, motive power, to jet engines, to space travel, to the simple things about remediating radiation out of people's bodies and cleaning up nuclear reactors, to cleaning up rivers and oceans. So, and that's through the, up here, the Strike Foundation, which holds the intellectual property, the IPECO, and then licensed through Strategic Technology Resource Industry Knowledge Empowerment was their licensing company. And so that's the model. And these, at the moment, the most pressing issue which we're focused on is chimneys, as well as the cars, but chimneys are also creating an enormous amount of particulate matter pollution, which is all positively charged, which is bad, and also chimneys as far as the toxic gases and the energy wasting. Like a normal car is only 34% energy efficient. A normal coal, using coal to generate electricity, that only uses 34% of the energy in the actual coal itself. So again, using the plasmoids to recover the waste energy from that process. So, and then re-inject that energy into the bed of the fire to double the productivity for the same amount of coal or wood in that fire without any pollution. So basically, that's the introduction, and that gives you a broad spectrum of where this presentation is going to go, what the commercial implications of it are, and this is section 1 of 15, and we'll just show you the next section here before I cut away, and we'll go over that in the next presentation. Thank you.